funny friends, my funny friends, my funny, funky, funny friends now. My funny friends, my funny friends, my funny, funky, funny friends now.
Starring Drew Harrison and Will Abeles.
All right, welcome back to My Funny Friends. I'm Drew Harrison. This is Will Abeles, and we got a great, fantastic show planned for you this week. Will, without further ado, do you want to let us know who our funny friend is this week?
Absolutely. This guy, I've known him for a few years, and he's always been someone, I think he's like one of the better guys in comedy in terms of you can turn to him, you can ask him a question, you can confide in him, and he'll give you the advice that you might need to hear, maybe the advice you didn't want to hear, but you had to hear it anyway. One of my favorites. Everyone, welcome Drew Morgan.
No, I knew you were going to bring up the advice thing. I was thinking about that a minute ago when I was walking my dog. I was like, I bet he's going to make me talk about that.
No. It's consistently like Will in his darkest hour being like, Joe, show me the light.
Yeah. And I'm like the worst of that because I'm like, nah, dude, it sucks. You're right.
I'm glad he turns to you because I wouldn't have anything.
Well, one time he was like, am I delusional? I was like, yeah,
yeah,
we all are though. Like, that's not, you think you're special for being delusional?
Yeah. I had just gotten trolled on a podcast in May of 2020. Two wonderful men from Boston who have been canceled since and don't do stand-up anymore.
We'll see who won.
Just decided,
who won,
yeah, they were like, you know what? There's people in the street protesting. There's people dying left and right. Let's go troll Will Abeles. And I didn't take it great. So
I was about to say, it sounded like they were successful there for a little bit.
They got me. They got me good.
Yeah,
they got me.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, that's a nice little dip into the backstory. Love that. Usually Drew Harrison asks this. I'm gonna ask it.
Look at that.
I'm feeling confident in
this is
one.
a brand new Will.
I went to the gym
Drew
today,
Morgan on the
endorphins are
podcast and Will put some stuff together for a change. This is nice.
Am I your dad?
I'm starting to think so.
Call you for advice, feeling confident. I'm a good dad.
He cleaned his room for the pot. It's usually a mess in the background. Like, good God.
Actually fair.
Is that a light bulb you're planning to hang yourself with? What is it over the mirror?
He's hung himself a few times on the show.
I did that when Blair Postman was on. I already ran that bit. I'm running out.
I'm so proud of you, son. I'm glad it was you.
Thanks, Dad. All right,
what the fuck was that? Was that our accent? All right.
I don't know. Okay. All right. This is getting hostile quick. This is actually like my actual father where I'm like, oh, we're having fun. And then he yells at me and I'm like, I'm sorry. I knew I should have slid, but I just ran through the base.
Remember, man, you ain't going to get nowhere talking to these two Drews bashing Southern accents. All right.
Yeah, I'm not. It's not great for me. Well, this has been fun. Hey, I'll see you two later. You enjoy the rest of the podcast.
But you got so hyped to ask the question, you didn't ask him the question.
Well, yeah, then Dad yelled at me, so I,
okay, all right.
Now I don't even want to do it. No, I'm kidding. So, Drew Morgan, we're gonna have to do this back and forth. What if I? Okay.
Just
Drew
call him
Morgan.
Drew. We'll know who you're talking to.
Yeah, hopefully. But I know there's gonna be some note that being like, I got confused by the Drews. Mom, I know you're the only listener, but like, so Drew, when and where did you start stand-up comedy?
Miami, Florida. When I was 25. I want to say it was either at the end of 2010 or the beginning of 2011.
Okay. Wow.
Maybe I was 26 now that I'm doing that math better.
Were you living in Miami?
Yeah, I had moved there after law school. Sorry, I just drank Topo Chico right before we started it, and now I'm burping. Yeah, I moved there right after law school. So it definitely would have been 2011 when I started.
Okay, cool.
I did not expect you to say Miami.
No, I didn't expect Miami at all. I just assumed it was going to be Tennessee.
Well, it's wild too because I was living in Boston and I wanted to do it. I was busy with law school, but like Boston, like there were competitions on campus and stuff at the undergrad.
Right.
And I just, and then my wife was like, hey, there's a competition stand up. She knew I wanted to do it. And I was like, yeah, I should do it. She's like, well, I signed you up. And I was like, all right, we're doing it. She was tired of being my only audience. Cause I would I'd be like, we think of this. Is this funny?
Yeah.
Actually, when kind of flash forward, that show we were talking to Anthony DeVito about this, but I don't know if you remember that Pit Loft show where it was just the only audience was your wife and your three friends. So
Who were my three friends?
I don't remember.
Yeah, like what if you were like, well, their names is Angel? No,
He pulls out a notepad. Like,
Andy, do you
That's
remember
about
going to the show at the Pit?
Pit Loft?
Pit Loft, me, Anthony DeVito,
2016,
Will Abeles,
17.
and it was just you and some of our friends were the only audience members.
That doesn't narrow down.
She said that doesn't.
Oh, spoken like a true comedy significant other.
It was so funny too because she had PTSD eyes for a second, and then she turned it into a joke.
I've seen that look on my wife's face before, for sure.
Oh,
Like,
that's
oh
great.
no, that
So
show.
where were you in school in Boston?
Boston College Law School.
Oh, I didn't know you went to BC. That's funny.
Yeah, why is that funny?
Because we would have been we would have been in Boston at the same time because I went to Emerson.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't know anything about it. I know that it's got like its own reputation in Boston.
Yeah.
And I think from like being there, I got it. I've never seen, I guess it's not true that I've never seen, it was a different outfit. You know, like in the South, all the girls at that time would have a specific outfit on campus. Well, their girls had a different outfit on. It was a skirt with leggings, Ugg boots, and then like a thin warm jacket. And it was just like, and they walked differently, you know, and I was older. Like, I was like, this is strange. And then I found out like, yeah, that's the BC girl. The BU girl is different than that. And then there's this, you know, it's like, all right.
Got their own branding.
I don't want to brag. I too had Uggs in college.
Of course,
They're man
did.
Uggs.
You were a Boston.
The sole is thicker. I rocked them.
Is that the only difference?
Yeah, that's it. Literally the only difference is like the sole is like this thick. It's like
I guess that makes sense because dudes weigh more and it does look differently. But it's also funny to imagine them being like, "We made it thicker."
Yeah. And then Tom Brady's
for
rocking
me.
them, so you're just like, "Oh, this is good. It's good." Tom Brady's got them.
See,
Yeah,
you
I
would
didn't get it
think
'cause of
that
Tom
would
Brady.
help sell them, but it doesn't for me.
No.
No,
And I
not
got
for
them
me
before
either.
Tom Brady. I want to make that clear. I had Ugg boots before Tom Brady decided. to
You
get
were
them
in
back.
Boston wearing Ugg boots, and you did it before Tom Brady. Okay.
And I didn't get my ass kicked once.
Will's like, I didn't even need Tom Brady. The girls were enough for me. I was like, yep, I want to look like her. Amber's rocking it.
Look at that posture.
They had
Cool.
weird posture.
Because they're terrible for your feet because they're super flat and they destroy your arches. This is not an Ugg pot. This is not an
Well,
Ugg
there goes our
podcast.
Ugg sponsorship hopes and dreams.
Yeah, I had that. I was like, you know what? I got to be honest about this. Ugg's not great for your feet.
Oh, man.
So you're in Miami. You started comedy. How consistently were you doing it starting out, or was it just kind of like that one off? Then you tried it again later, or like how did you?
No, I mean, I got the bug pretty quickly. So that was a contest that had rounds, and I went through every round and finished second. And then I started getting up about once a week. And at the same time, I don't mind talking about it, but it'll bring the mood of your podcast down. My brother got arrested for some real like heavy stuff. Like it was very serious stuff. My trial partner down there, my friend, we were hanging out on the beach one day. Wild guy. Used to get so fucking drunk and go to sleep at like 6 a.m. and then just come in to do trial work in a purple suit, smelling like booze and cigarettes. He went to NYU, genius, insane person. Told me one night he was in love with me and hated my wife, so we had to stop being friends. But we were hanging out on the beach.
Oh, that's a great ending to that.
Yeah, we were hanging out on the beach, and he was just like, "Why are you here?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, man, just go home. Like, you need to be home." I was like, "Fuck, you're right." And that's when I moved to Knoxville. And at that time, Matt Ward, who's I think completely out of the game. He may still run some festivals, but he was a comedian and a showrunner and a festival runner and founder. He had a lot of stuff going on in Knoxville, and it was kind of wild to go from a huge city where I was driving all over once a week here, open mics, I'd get on a show or two, to having more consistent stage time in Knoxville, Tennessee. And then that is what changed things for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And And Knoxville at that time, because it's a little different now, because now there's a scene there for sure, but it's very small. It's kind of trying to get itself back up because there was a club there at some point. I don't think there's a club anymore, or is there still a club?
There's no club. That club was
Yeah.
Side Splitters. I don't want to ruin UGG and Side Splitter sponsorship, but at that time, it was the worst club in the country.
Yeah.
I'll put that against anybody. And second worst was the other one. Now I have heard that the one in Tampa, which is still going, has new management and is a lot more comedian friendly. And they always had good crowds there in Tampa, is my understanding. But the guy who owns them, Bobby Jewell, is, and this is saying something. What I'm about to say, you guys have been in comedy a little while. This is truly saying something. Is the worst person I've ever met in stand-up comedy.
That standard is woof.
Now, I only saw Louis walk by me on the streets, and I never met Bill Cosby, but like, he's the worst person I've ever met. I don't think I've met Louis yet. Listen, I'm just on your podcast just shit talking people who are still working.
Love it.
You would be shocked at how like honest all the comics have been. Were like, and I don't want to upset anyone, but, and they'll just say a manager's name and be like, but they can go fuck themselves. I'm like, all right, here we go.
Well, I try not to do that in general for a variety of reasons. This is a business. I may have to go work Side Splitters, blah, blah, blah. But I vowed to never work for Bobby Jewell again the day I got fired from Side Splitters by his little lackey, whose name I won't say, only because I think she's petty enough to find this. She does comedy now near where you are, Will. Are you also in Nashville now, Drew?
Yeah, I'm in Nashville,
Yeah.
She does comedy around there, and I won't mention. I mean, if she's listening right now, she knows who I'm talking about, but I won't say her name so other people don't fucking. Okay. But she was horrible too. My understanding is like she's changed a lot. Like she was young, he made her a manager as a young person, but she was bitter and mean. And I thought that's how comedy worked. I was like, well, I've always heard comedy managers and they're trying to toughen you up. I mean, she would say wild shit like, hey, you want to feature this weekend? I'd be like, yeah, what, somebody quit. She's like, no, I was just fucking with you. You can suck my dick though, and then just walk out.
That's so, what a mind fuck.
All the time it was stuff like that. And then when they fired me, I had done a Matt Ward show on a night they weren't open. I made a post about it. Trey Crowder, who I tour with now, shared it, and they sent us both an email. Not like a copy, like it just was Trey and Drew. You are no longer welcome at the club. I'm sick of y'all's bullshit. And the bullshit that they said they were sick of was that we promoted Matt Ward's shows more than we promoted theirs. The truth was we were admittedly, and it was partially because she was so mean to us in general, we were like, we knew we were the best. And we were when are you going to let us feature and stop, letting
messing with us.
Bilbo Hillbilly, whose whole bit is that he's a hobbit and a hill. Like, what are you doing? Like, stop letting these people feature and let us feature. And that was the bullshit she was tired of. We were arrogant or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Having confidence in what you do as a craft and hopefully a profession. How dare you? How dare you?
Yeah, it was hilarious.
When
it is now.
Well, yeah,
was not.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't that great to open that.
It felt huge.
Yeah.
When I started in Boston, and the manager of the club that I used to, he was a friend now, but he used to be really hard on new comics, and sometimes he's still hard on people, or as far as I know, but that was so rewarding when he finally let you in the club, kind of, where it was like the reason, like I was doing shows for him for like years. And I was even coming back from New York to do them because I couldn't get booked in New York. So I kept going back to Boston. And I remember I just brought up this moment where like Gary Goldman almost got in a fist fight with like a Marine in the audience. And I was like, hey, do you remember this moment? And then he was like, oh, yeah, Will's been doing this for a while. And since then we've been great, So at least like you knew it was like kind of an act.
Remind him of the years you had in?
Kind of, I mean, a little bit, but he also would give me like weird notes, but like, you're too New York now. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. I'm 24 years old, I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, that makes no sense. It's like, were you up there talking about Timberlands and getting in fights on the subway?
Yeah. I talked about the L train exclusively. I'll go to Boston and just talk about the L train the entire time.
If you're gonna do New York jokes, talk about the Bronx at least.
Come on.
Seriously, at least we know it.
Hmm.
So going back a little bit, like what made you want to try stand-up? Was it something like you were growing up? Did you come from a funny family? Was it something you were interested in when you were younger? Or is this just like kind of on a whim? Someone was like, hey, you're funny, go do it.
No, the first thing and all that. I do have a funny family. My father's a pastor. He was a drunk though till I was like 8 or 9 or 10, and then he started preaching when I was like 14. So I've seen all those sides of him. But he's very
All the
funny.
phases of life, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's very dry. We were a comedy family. Jerry Clower, my mom listened to Jerry Clower growing up, who's a Southern, kind of leans Christian, but like he was huge. He was Foxworthy before Foxworthy was Foxworthy. His story's wild. Like he sold feed at farmer co-ops
Okay.
and got so good at his presentations that they were able to charge a fee to just hear him sell you feed. You would pay money to be sold feed as a farmer by Jerry Clower because his stories were so good. And he like played football at the University of Mississippi. Like he was a big guy. He was hilarious.
People
but anyway,
wanted
my
to hear
mom
him
would
talk.
my mom would listen to him. I remember my uncle drove You Might Be a Redneck over to our house. So, like it went viral in that way. Like he like showed up and was like, you've got to hear this, Nancy, to my mom, because their dad was a storyteller and was so funny. So my mom is a storyteller and a historian, and my dad is real dry and funny. And then like, I remember like mom and Aunt Lisa watching Delirious and me sneaking up and like, they don't like this kind of talk, but they do like it. Like, what's going on? What's the secret here? Because they were very much like, don't let my kids, because we're Christian and all that. And I don't watch rated R movies. So that was, that stuck with me. And then in high school, most people about our age, we had the golden age of TV comedy, in my opinion. I know that kids now can watch Netflix and YouTube, and if you're into it, and I'm sure that that's great for them. With us, you start flipping through the channels when you get home from school or after practice or whatever. You had Premium Blend, you had BET's Comic View, you had a bunch of other shows
TRL.
and there was stand-up.
Yeah,
that was one of the options, and I just got into it. And the way some people have albums that like they remember their teenage years by, it's comedy specials for me. I got to open for Greg Fitzsimmons at Healy in Portland, and I didn't tell him this because I didn't want to date him too bad, but like, dude, you were my guy. Like I was 14 and like, I thought you were he had just enough juvenile sensibilities to hook me as a 14-year-old. He had this great joke about he thought he saw Ron Jeremy at a gas station and he wasn't sure it was him, but then when he got done, he pulled the gas thing out and sprayed it all over the front of the car, and he was like, yeah, that's him. But then he also had these jokes about, like, he had this story about doing a prom, and they hired him to be the entertainment at a prom, and he offended them, so they wrote a letter to his management. He reads the letter on his special. It was biting, but it was also social commentary, looking back on it now. In other words, I was pretty smart, but I was juvenile. This dude had me. Like that was the perfect age for fucking Fitzsimmons. And I still feel that way about Greg Fitzsimmons, for the record. You're going to hear a dick joke, and then like the slightest, not over the top social commentary. He's a master. By the way, did that same punchline when I opened for him, not the whole weekend, just one time that weekend. I watched every set like this. Was talking about something else and then riffed it in a joke about a doctor pulling a needle out and spraying it on people's faces.
Wow, funny.
It's awesome.
Greg Fitzsimmons was one of the first professional comics I actually met in person, because I was interning at Kimmel in college. And at that point, well, I guess that's not true. Eddie Brill was the first professional comic I had met. But Eddie gave me this advice and was like, yeah, don't write a dick joke. Try and write something better than that. And the producer at Kimmel was like, hey, like, we know you're trying to do comedy. Do you want to meet Greg Fitzsimmons? I'm like, yeah. And so I go to the green room, and the set was amazing. It was so much fun to watch. And he was like, oh, like, how long have you been doing it? And I was like, I've been like dabbling for a year or so. And he was like, oh, and I was like, yeah, Eddie Brill saw my set. He gave me some good notes. He goes, oh, what'd Eddie say? And I was like, oh, he told me not to write any dick jokes. He goes, oh, after I just did a dick joke on national television. But he was super nice, and I got to pick his brain for a little while, and it was really cool. So I'm 21 years old, getting to talk to this guy who's been doing it forever at that point. Yeah.
Dude, I really like him a lot. He's one of my favorite comedians, and he's such a Boston Irish guy
Yeah,
who is
yeah,
also really thoughtful, leans kind of left, drives a Prius now and has weird feelings about that because his dad was mean to him. And like, I really identify with all of that. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And he's sober now and he drinks non-alcoholic beer in the green room because that's what guys do. And like, I
yeah, yeah,
love shit like that, man. It's like, yeah, why would you change? Like, you
yeah,
know, like you're perfect.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah. He's fantastic. So you come back home. You're in Knoxville. Uh, you're
Just
you're
got
done with
banned
sides.
from the club.
Yeah. So what'd you do next? What did you guys
took
do
about a
next?
year to get banned from the club. I worked in Knoxville for a year. I was a bar back until I could get all my licensing switched over. And then I got a job as a public defender. Now, there's a story that we'll see if I have the balls to tell it. I've told this before on my own podcast, so I'm not really worried about,
Right.
you know, surprising my own woke fans. But I went to get the job as the lawyer, and they had a portion of the interview where you sat at the end of a table and most of the office was there and they were allowed to ask you questions. And this woman asked me, now you guys got to remember, both you guys listening and people listening at home, this was 2013 maybe.
Oh,
And
okay.
I am a former jock turned comedian. I had not grown as a person much. She said, I want to know why there's a joke. No, I want to know what you're going to do when a client of ours who happens to be gay hears you do a joke on the internet where you say the F slur. Now, my first thought was, I don't do a joke where I say that. So I'm kind of looking at her and she can tell
Right.
that I don't know what she's talking about. She goes, the food challenge. And I literally went, oh, the Taco Bell food challenge. You saw that?
Oh,
My
that's
friends
funny.
and I, Trey Crowder, who I tour with now, was there. Everyone else, I think, quit comedy. We decided to have a challenge and film it. It was like when content was first starting to be a thing, and it was like, what are we going to do? And we decided to buy $100 worth of Taco Bell between 5 people, one of which was a girl, which was my wife, and we had to eat it. We had a few rules, and one of the rules was no salads because Taco Bell salads at that time were like $8, but it wasn't a lot of calories, so we thought that was cheating. Like it's not fair to the challenge. So I riffed the line. We were like going like, Drew, you do rule number 2. So
Right.
I said, rule number 2, no salads. Salad is a French word that means F slur pussy. And this was 2012. I just got done playing college football. It just whatever. And she brings
Twitter was
this
the
up
Wild West at that time. Yeah.
right. And so I wasn't even on Twitter. So she brings this up in an interview. I didn't even know it was on the internet. It was on a website called the Black Liver Society, which was like a group that was performing stand-up together. And the guy who ran that was there. He put it out like, this is kind of what we do.
Content.
We do. Yeah. So she brings that up and I'm freaking out. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'd worked for 2 public defender offices, and they're very much, that's a trial where you got to tell cops they're liars to their face. So I thought ignorantly, this is like, they told her to do this to see how I would react. And I'm scrambling in my brain and I'm thinking I have to react calmly without getting defensive, but I also have to not back down. Right. Because this is ultimately a job interview for a trial lawyer. So I'm like, I don't know. I guess I would tell them, that it's a joke. And then we got into a whole thing about that. And then she goes, all right, well, explain the joke.
Oh, wow.
And I'm sitting there. Now, everyone hearing this, you know how the culture is now, but you got to understand it wasn't really as much like that then. So like, I wasn't freaking. I was ignorantly freaking. I was staring murder right in the face, not knowing that this lady wanted me to not ever work there, thinking this is like a challenge I got to meet.
Yeah.
So I just go, all right, well, salad, French, said the word again to everybody in the room like an idiot. Pussy. It's 4 words that dumbass jocks are like, that's weak. French people are weak. Salad's weak. And I was like, and it's stupid. None of those things are weak. So I was just being ironic. Salad, French, pussies are tough or pussies not tough, but everyone acts
Yeah.
like they're weak. So I was being ironic. And the main guy, the public defender goes, man, I get it. That's pretty good. And I was like, I think I'm in, you know. I
You're
told my
right.
friends about it, and Trey is like, you are not getting that job.
Like,
A week or two later, they bring me in and they're like, we're going to make you an offer, blah, blah, blah. I need you to know something. You nearly split my office in two. And I almost didn't give you a job interview, not because a job here, not because I'm like upset with what you did, but I'm afraid that this is going to hurt the office. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he told me that after I left, they got into this huge debate about what we're doing now very publicly with like,
right.
it's like art versus the person, and are jokes acceptable? And he wasn't saying anything bad about gay people. He was saying that people saying that word means weakness is stupid.
Yeah.
And he's telling me this and my eyes are getting big, and he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, you're telling me that half the office hates me and the other half, that half is mad at them over me. And he's like, pretty much. And so I had to keep my head down and just do my work. I had almost no friends in that office for about 4 months. It was pretty difficult, which I deserve. I recognize that.
Yeah, sure, fine.
I bring it up in the relation to this because so then I became Drew Whitney on stage, and I will never, ever forgive myself for not becoming Whit Morgan in that moment. I will never, ever let it go. I have come very close to changing my name to Whit Morgan, even though I now have a fan base, an IMDb page, a book with my name on it. Whit Morgan. What the fuck? What a great Southern comedian name. And I was like, I guess I'll be Drew Whitney. That's my middle name.
You missed it.
So I was Drew Whitney the whole time I was in Knoxville as a comedian. I was brought on stage, welcome to stage, Drew Whitney, because I didn't want my coworkers to know that I was still pursuing it. I wanted them to think it was a dumb thing I did during a dumb hobby type thing, you know?
Yeah.
That's funny because I remember I think I met you around, I want to say like 2015, 2016, maybe somewhere around there. And I remember always being kind of confused trying to find you on social media because it was Drew Whitney Morgan and then it was Drew Morgan. And I just I didn't know that there was a backstory to any of that. I thought it was just like social media being like, oh, I'm picking this name or picking that name, whatever.
Yeah. And I didn't know, you know, again, everyone listening, imagine before you knew or cared about social media, you know, a guy who like wants me to do shows with him and stuff, I would be like, I would hear that and just not realize that's a bad move professionally, dude.
I should probably change it.
Like, he found me.
Yeah. Like trying to promote you was always like, I don't know what to tag. It was just like,
and my comedian email, like my Gmail name is Drew Whitney still, not because of that, but because I put it in as 3 names. And Gmail is racist towards Southern Americans. It won't like let you have 3 names. So I'm Drew Whitney.
We just lost UGG. We lost Gmail. I mean, the sponsors are falling like flies.
Side Splitters is taking your spot.
Side Splitters is gone. Yeah. On multiple levels.
I just opened an email. Will, me and you are banned from Side Splitters globally.
Send it together again. I see they're still saving time, not even copy and pasting.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, hey Drew, tell Will.
Yeah.
just let him know. And like I'm over here just like plotting the, you know, burn it down. Like, oh, okay, yeah, they don't want to kick us out. Okay, well, I'll have a drive tonight, and then
can't get canceled if they're in the club.
Yeah, but yeah, I spent a couple years there, and then personally, my brother did go to prison. And it was one of those moments where it was like, all right, we kind of just came back to Tennessee for that. So I just said to my wife, you moved to Boston for me, then you moved to Miami, then you moved here. Where do you want to go? And she was like, New York. And because she's an actor and a writer. And I was like, yeah, that works for me. Because I was already starting to really want to do this. And I was starting to get not good, but like serviceable. I was starting to know how it worked. Really, I had a tape that was getting me into a few comedy festivals.
Yeah. And so how long were you in? So you moved to Queens, if I remember correctly, right? You guys lived in
Harlem first before I met you for 1 year, and then Queens the rest of the time I was in New York. Yeah,
right. Because I remember we met at the Comedy Catch, and I was just getting back. I got out of comedy for like a year and a half, and I had just gotten back in. I was in Chattanooga for a wedding. and the comedy catch was nice enough just to answer an email, which no one does. No one answers like the info at whatever, and they were like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, come do 7 minutes." And I remember just being
That's
like,
great, dude, because Michael, the owner of the catch, is in the same era, cut from the same cloth as the worst owner I've ever known, Bobby Jewel, but is on
Yeah.
the entire other end of the spectrum.
"Yeah,
That's good. to
Just like the same kind of 80s, you got to be tough, and I'll tell you to go fuck yourself, but also I'll tell you this joke was good, and he really wants his club to do
So that
well.
just shows you it's not
Right,
that
yeah.
hard. You hear that? Club
Yeah,
owners and boogers. It's not that hard to be nice.
yeah." Listen, this is where it starts. The revolution starts here for.
I don't know if I call
bookers.
Michael nice. I would call him
Yeah, yeah.
cares about comedy and comics, but you know what I mean?
It's
good.
nice to see a little effort, you know?
Yeah,
Just a
good
little-
person, not a nice
Yeah.
person.
But yeah, I remember we did that show, and I remember I was talking to you in the back with my ex, and you were like, "I live in Queens," and I was like, "What? Who is this guy?" You know, and then I like did a little research and found out you were
Was
touring
that
and all that
featuring
stuff.
for Kurt
You were
Metzger?
No, you were featuring for. Sorry, I don't know. Is that you tour with them now?
Trey?
No, it wasn't Trey. It was
DJ?
DJ. It was DJ.
That was been one of the Christmas shows. Hell yeah.
Yeah, so DJ was headlining. I remember that was the first time I ever saw him, and I've been following him since as well. And watching the two of you, I couldn't tell you who anyone else who was on the show. I really couldn't, because I just was watching you. Like, you two were the ones that stood out for me. But I remember that was the first time I did any show, you know, besides, you know, if you want to count Maryland as the South, which I know no one does.
It
Besides
doesn't
Maryland, I'd never done a show below the Mason-Dixon line. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna bomb. And I was so in my head. And I just remember getting up there, doing jokes that have worked as far as I'd known, and just like, I didn't completely bomb, but I do remember my ex being furious with me when I got off stage because it wasn't good. It like was not worth the time to be there. And then like we watched you. And
Why is
was
she
like,
mad
why
at
didn't-
you for doing that?
Yeah, I don't. Will you
The
clearly
word
got some
X is
issues
there
with
for a
people who are
reason.
mean to you.
You know, I use it.
I
And
can't believe you
use it.
bombed.
I don't know if this will make you feel better or worse. I had forgotten we met there. I thought we met in New York, or that might have just been an assumption I made based upon, you know, the shows we did together in New York. But I do remember it now. And, you know, that was like a big deal weekend for me, too, because Michael was letting me feature for the first time. He hadn't before I moved.
Oh,
But
okay.
that's another reason he answered your email and let you go up. Michael knows enough about New York. And I guess at that time didn't know enough about people being willing to lie, you know, via email or whatever.
Yeah,
But like,
yeah.
I was just like, I've been in New York for a year, Michael. And he's like, you're ready to feature then. You know what I mean?
Get on up there, kid.
God, could you imagine?
But I
it that
was.
simple?
He had me back to
Yeah,
feature
yeah.
for Kurt like 3 months later.
I remember like actually thinking that at some point where I was like emailing, like, let's say, like, you know, I don't want to pick out any one city, but like, for example, like say Richmond, Virginia, and being like, I got New York, I can feature, and then be like, no. Just like, no, we're not even gonna entice it. Like, we're not even gonna let you host. You can come down for free and do a guest spot. And you were like, all right, well, fine, I guess we'll go do that.
That'll be good.
So so what's the next step after Knoxville? Because you're touring nonstop now, and you got a book and you got all this stuff.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So I guess like right
Yeah.
before I left Knoxville, I did the Knoxville competition. It was absolutely my plan to go out on top. I was like, I'm gonna win this and then leave town.
Just drop
And
the
I
mic. Yeah.
right. And in my head, Trey was my only competition. And in Trey's head, I was his only competition. Trey had a good set, but not a great set in the final round. I was like, all right, I got this. And then this dude who is a buddy of mine, he had packed the house out and there was a crowd vote. And that wasn't all a crowd vote. He had a good set.
Yeah.
It was close and that tip. So I came in second anyway. And then I left town with that under my fucking belt and in my car. I went to New York. I was there about a year. I was not killing it at all. I was meeting good people and comics who had some time, recognized that I knew what I was doing, that I've been doing it a while.
Yeah.
I'll also say that I didn't have a lot of great material yet. You know, I had some okay jokes. The open mic scene wasn't great for me. I was working as an attorney. I started doing document review, which Dean Masello, a guy who doesn't do comedy anymore, told me about that, which saved me because I was working at Trader Joe's and not making enough
Oh, no
money
way.
and falling apart. But then doc review paid well. It's a type of legal work that most people don't want to do. Like if you want to be a professional attorney, you don't want this work. But if you're trying to be a stand-up, it pays so much better than, you know, fucking whatever else.
Sure.
I'm there for about a year. Then I started meeting enough people to get the contacts, and I went through this thing. And most people who live in New York for a while go through this. I started figuring out how to get auditions for clubs. You can do bringers at some of them, but there's like other better ways to do it where they take you a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
And I got passed at every one I tried out at and got one spot total in the next 4 months out of that. It was such a weird, I guess in retrospect, humbling and eye-opening opinion. Like I'd gotten my time in the South, and then I'd gotten stage time in New York, and I had an angle, and I had the Southern thing, and I was not great, but I had a good 6-minute set, and I would go, and they would be like, "You're good, you're passed," and then send us your avails, and I would do it, and I would do it, and I would do it, and nothing happened. And then I asked one of them, Emilio, who owns New York Comedy Club. He doesn't book it anymore, but he did at the time. He was like, "Dude, we pass people if they're good. It doesn't matter what our numbers are, but we have more people pass than we have spots for. And like, I don't see you. You're not around." And I'm like, well, that's because like, if I'm not working super late and hanging out with my wife, I'm going somewhere I can get stage time.
Right.
And he's like, that's cool. You need to do that about half the time and come around the other half. Since he told me that, that was the place I would go do it at. And I started to get a little bit of stage time there. And it was still such an uphill battle. I was getting check spots. I'm definitely a comedian who has to be over. I don't have a lot of great one-liners. You have to like get what I'm doing, you know, who I am, all that.
It's a personality thing.
Yeah. It started to go okay. And then Trey, who I've alluded to a couple of times, broke the internet and went viral kind of before anybody in stand-up did.
Yeah, I didn't know Trey was a stand-up when I saw
that was how most people thought it. And
Yeah.
that was a real problem for him. Like he had to get through a lot of psychologically because people he respected didn't respect him kind of off the jump, because there was a time before where making it on the internet, most stand-ups thought that meant that you didn't do stand-up.
Right.
And I got to give him a lot of credit because he saw it the other way. I mean, he was stuck there, right? He had a family. He had a really good job in Knoxville. And then he got fired from the club. So he was trying to figure out what to do. But I remember being at the stand and really wanting to get in there. And one of my friends at the time had a spot, and they didn't get bumped, but they got pushed back because someone showed up that we didn't know. And we were like, who is that? And somebody was like, they got like 200,000 Instagram followers. And I was like, what the fuck? And I remember being back there like arms crossed with the other comedians, like, this is bullshit. And they weren't good. And I give Trey credit because he realized, wait, I can just do it. Like, why am I sitting around mad at this person? I'll just go for it. And he did. And we had just gotten signed as a writing team with an independent manager. Trey and another guy I toured with named Corey had a blog they were doing, like a weight loss blog. I'm telling you, Trey like went full into the internet. He was like, all right, we're going to do content. So he had this weight loss blog. Well, I conned them into giving me the password for some lame excuse. I was like, I was going to send you guys this picture to use, but I can't send it. I'll just upload it. What's the password? So they would do their little weight loss blog, and then I would just roast them at the end every week. I like force myself into the blog. And then this independent manager signed us as a writing team, essentially.
Is that your current manager?
No, let's not talk about that.
Okay, fine.
And then when Trey went viral, we had somebody in our corner to try and use that. And I'll give her credit too. She knew Roy Wood Jr. and Roy had worked with two of us at that time. So he could be a little bit of a vouch of like, these aren't just dipshits from the internet, you know?
Yeah, right. Like they've been doing stand-up. They know how to do stand-up. You can put them on stage at
stand-ups and also figured out the internet.
Right.
So we went on tour. We planned a week-long small run through the South, and a production company that wanted to make Trey into some sort of reality thing. And for people who don't know, Trey went mega viral and then backed it up. Huge. Then he had a couple other videos go viral and was building steam. And we took vacation. We took a week off from work to see.
Yeah.
and shows were selling out like crazy.
Wow.
And what he had tapped into, and for people who don't know, he went viral as the liberal redneck. He had tapped into identity politics as comedy. I won't say before anybody did that, because really all Chappelle's show and Schumer's show were identity politics as sketch comedy.
Right.
But before so many stand-ups were doing it, so because people didn't realize. I mean, dude, even Fox had kind of figured it out, Fox News, from a political side. But like now what we see with Facebook and the divide of the country and all that, that's what this is. Yeah, we absolutely played a part in that. Sorry about that. I think we tapped into that, and it was the ignorance of even people who live in the South for not realizing that there were so many people desperate to hate liberal elites, but not gay people.
Yeah.
Because it had become, through Fox News, this like, our fans in the South love Jeff Foxworthy, just as an example, especially those early fans, right? But they weren't, they had people in their families who were Bible thumping dipshits, but they weren't. And they hadn't seen, I mean, this is a beautiful thing about the internet. You want to talk about representation. Well, what about representation of thought and all that? They just hadn't seen somebody do it and do it well. Trey did it well.
He gave them another option,
Exactly. And then they came and saw us, and we knew what we were doing. And I cannot stress that enough. Like, the timing was so lucky. A year, maybe 18 months more fairly earlier, that tour would have been mediocre. George Wallace, the comedian, not the governor who's dead, became a fan of Trey's pretty quickly on the internet and came to see us do comedy and was so kind. Stood up on stage after we were done, brought us back up there, started telling the crowd about how this joke we did was so good and why. Yeah. And did our podcast, told the world these guys are legit. Amazing. The last thing I remember him saying to us is, they're gonna make so much money off y'all. I hope y'all get some.
And that's the thing about your fan base is like, I mean, we were doing Zoom shows. I remember we did that one random show through Kaylee Harmon, and you brought the entire group. I mean, it was like 60 people on a Zoom show, and it was just like this dark time in comedy history, right? But people were there. They were there to laugh. And then I don't remember if it was that show or the one we did last year that you were like, hey, sit around and talk to them. Like, just sit around afterwards and talk to them. And it was like, they knew you, they knew inside jokes, like you guys you were so connected to your fan base in a very real way. And it was like, I was like, oh, I want this. Like,
yeah. Well, so that there's distance between that first week and that, and there's even distance between who those people are. And I'd love to talk about that. It's weird because, I don't know who listens to y'all's show. I very much want to get away from identity politics. And I have been trying to for a long time. First of all, I'm pretty much a straight stand-up. I prefer to talk about my wife, and I do some social commentary, and it is pretty clear through my social commentary where I stand. But I pride myself on the fact that it's funny. It's funny because it's funny. I defy you not to find it funny. You know what I mean?
Right.
And people who know me well in the comedy industry will back that up. I mean, I won't name certain names, but like, there are people who are like, listen, you are the most straight stand-up of the group. Like, you've got to focus on this and that, But we go on tour and it's a whirlwind. The book deal comes through and it was mind-boggling. Another thing about the time we're talking about is people didn't know what viral meant and what to do with it. They thought Trey was way more famous than he was. And they gave us a fat fucking check. And Trey needed help with the book because there was like a tight turnaround. So we did it together, and he was very kind as far as that goes. And anyway, then we go on tour and we start to build the tour as three comedians, and I'm really glad we did that because Well Read, which is what we tour as, became its own brand. Yep. And we proved to ourselves it became a brand. There was a time when we had toured too hard and kind of oversaturated some markets. Sure. And ticket sales weren't bad, but they weren't selling out. And we went to Trey Crowder Live instead of Well Read, and it got worse. And that was like Need us.
Here's the end. Here's the end.
Well,
Yeah.
it was like,
Team.
but it was also a relief because it was like,
Yeah.
so you do need the well-read brand a little bit. Thank God.
Yeah, this is a squad now.
Yeah, we continue to do that. We've sold some TV shows, never gotten any made. We've kind of we're in the typical comedy career as best I can tell. I mean, in the sense that we have a small fan base. We're in LA, most of us. We have some heat. We get to go to certain meetings. We've done some stuff with Comedy Central, which I've been really proud of. I wrote the first two. I think I'm getting the order correctly. And
the one in the kitchen, the one in the restaurant.
The restaurant one I wrote, and it did really well, and it's based on my old closer.
Yeah,
thank you. And we just did a couple more with them that Corey wrote that have done really well. Comedy Central, give us a fucking show, you idiots! I'll tell you guys a very embarrassing New York story.
Comedy Central, here we go.
But before the pandemic, I recognized that I love well-read fans, all of them, most of them, but there's definitely an expectation and a desire that we be morally righteous and then funny.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And first of all, I'm not good enough of a person for that.
That's good you recognize that though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys heard that story, but I'll say the joke. Once you explain to me why it hurts people, I'll be like, oh, you're right. I don't want to hurt people, but I'm gonna say what's funny,
Yeah.
And so recognizing that, I just started to and then I also, on our own podcast, I recognized I got very radicalized by some people's standards politically. And I don't think I'm that radical. And if I lived in Europe, I wouldn't be radical at all. But what I'm saying is, basically, I'm saying I fucking hate the Democratic Party, with the fiery passion of 1,000 suns. And the more that became obvious to well-read fans, less and less of them started fucking with me.
Got confusing.
And I knew that was going to continue to be an issue. I don't really want to do politics. And when it does come up, they don't agree with me.
Right.
Yeah.
So DJ and I, who've always been buddies, started doing our own thing. He was like a guest. He's our old friend. He probably would have been on tour with us if he hadn't been going through some personal shit from the jump. So he and I started doing stuff together. And that's more who you met, Will.
Yeah.
It was well-read fans who kind of did like what I said politically. And DJ was one of the best guests we've ever had on our podcast. Probably the best. Probably funnier than George Wallace. I hope George don't see that. Now George ain't gonna book y'all either.
God, if we get a subtweet from George, I'll be like, you know what? The heck?
Well, I just meant on the podcast. I didn't mean in live. That led us to start doing things. And then during the pandemic, we started a cult as a joke.
Yeah, right.
And that's kind of who you met, which is people who are either into jokes or cults. Sometimes I can't tell which.
That's a fun.
That's sort of made some money off your cult. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great fans. They're real into being fans, and they love comedy. And there's still a lot of DJ's got a lot of heart. We have a huge trans following as far as the percentages of our fan base, and that's rad. That's super rad. But I'm just saying, it's not like I'm gas digital now. You know what I mean? I'm not. It's not hard jokes necessarily. There's still a lot of heart to it, I think, but. Anyway, that's where we're at as far as the fan base goes. And then as far as touring, I still tour with Well Read. I've gotten good enough now. I mean, the genesis of us touring going back, that was 6 years ago when George Wallace told that crowd that we were legit and funny.
6 years ago?
Yeah.
Jeez.
I'm really good at stand-up now. I feel very comfortable saying that.
Yeah.
And I feel comfortable saying that for the first time in my life, probably the last 2 or 3 years, right before the pandemic started, unfortunately, is when I started really feeling that way and knowing it. And so now I'm trying to figure out, where that will go, where it can go, where it should go, because it's a strange thing to be known for a thing that you don't really want to be known for, but you obviously don't want to let go of the idea that you're known for anything.
Right.
Yeah, right. You're thankful for it, but you also still want to create your own path. Yeah.
Well, and it's also I'm not famous enough to make a really good living headlining on my own. I could do it, but I'm 37. Wife wants to have a kid. I could do like sleeping on floors and headline. But then like you start trying to piece something else together and like feature for people. Well, it kind of weirds people out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you just got those politics, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I'm trying to navigate that right now. And that's kind of where I'm at. And just filmed a special at Zany's in December. It should be out soon. I just went through the first round of my edits. I cannot believe how good it turned out. I can't believe how good it looks. And I am really good at stand-up comedy. And I can't wait for it to come out. Trey and Corey are too. Like, it's a great special. And that's, you know, I don't know. That's me. That's where I'm at now.
Is it being released as one, like all three of you at once? It's like a well-read special, or is it each of you individually releasing a special?
We're trying to navigate that. We're hoping that, depending on, well, Comedy Central and some other buyers or potential buyers who we're in talks with, if we go that route, it'll be a well-read special. If we self-release them, I think we're going to stagger them. Like, we'll put them out back to back to back weeks and try to help each other, you know, promo them or whatever. But yeah.
Nice.
So I know it's like a new account I just started following from you on Instagram, and it looks like you and DJ are working on something with like a trailer.
And it's funny you say trailer and you got my accent, but
Trailer?
Yeah. So one of the things
It's
DJ
a cult
and I,
trailer?
it is. It's a cult trailer. But I got some bad news. As it relates to it. But it is a funny story, and it kind of shows what DJ and I are into too. We also started realizing a lot of our fans are very creative. They would send us stuff. We had a PO box. They would send us art. This is something I bought from one of these witch artists we got. That's a deer skull that she's painted up all wild. Her name is Allison Reed. She's awesome. We started just like having them on. So we would do a comedy show on a Friday. And then the next Friday, we would be like, y'all just come on and show us what you make and we'll make fun of it. And we called it Art Share. Well, then this guy comes on there. His name's Carl. We've been calling him Papaw Carl. And then we knew he made stuff. Like, he told us that. He goes, can I show my stuff? And he sent us his website, and it was mind blowing. He makes like public art installments, like for the city of Newport Beach, California. Like, he's got a 7-story matchstick that's made out of glass and metal. It's unreal. Like, this dude's super legit, right?
Okay.
So we have him on there. He talks to us. He ends up getting like emotional about art, tells us that, you know, he couldn't believe he found us. And we're like, we can't believe you give a fuck about us.
Yeah, right.
And he hits us up about a project to do like comedy and art together. And he is the designer of the trailer.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he has put a lot of money into making it. It's very close to being done, but he has realized through this process of being gone from his family, because he had to make it in upstate New York, coupled with like gas prices and all this other stuff going on, he has like no interest in going on the road right now. So DJ and I are still touring this summer. Well Red's on a hiatus. Trey and Corey are going abroad. They're going to the UK for like a book that they cut me out of, those motherfuckers. And start beef on your podcast with everybody, including my own tour mates.
I'm excited for like just everything that we're just like dropping right now. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. But
all
me
press
and DJ
is good press.
Yeah. But me and DJ are touring all summer. We won't have the trailer, but we will be we're going to do a bunch of shows, but 5 of the shows are going to be like rural art and rural culture shows. We're doing storytellers. We're going to do this author named Robert Geip that we love. We're going to get Lee Baines from Lee Baines and the Glory Fires, which is one of the best punk bands in America, to do a show with us, hopefully. So we're planning all that out, and we're going to make a tour doc about it, or maybe just a sizzle reel and see if it's a TV show. But I'm pumped about all that. All that came from the people you were just talking about. Yeah. Dude, we had a lady come to a show from in Asheville from Alaska.
Oh, I think I saw you post about this, right?
To see us do comedy, but also to hang out with her friends she had met while during the quarantine at our Zoom shows. You know what I mean?
Funny. Yeah. That's really cool.
That's the people that I adore. And again, I'm so grateful for Well Red fans for the money and the showing up at the theaters and all that. But the 400 to 1,000 people DJ and I have, I'm trying to build on that because I mean, look, they're not going to let me slide if I turn right wing, but I feel like they're a bigger fan of what I do. You know what I mean? Rather than just like what you said about Trump was funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like you're analyzing it in a very specific way, and they're like, well, that's what we want, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, so Drew, what do you got? What do you got coming up? Anything you want to plug?
You can follow me at Drew Morgan Comedy. At Into the Biscuit is the cult podcast thing DJ and I are into.
You had me a biscuit.
Yeah.
Well, Drew, it's been so great talking to you and hearing the whole story. One of my single favorite things that's been a blessing for me as a comedian that knows you is how often people think I'm you. And
is that why you shaved?
I mean, I had no choice. But I would have people in New York come up and be like, "Oh man, how's the road been?" And and I'm doing like 4 people, in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, "Oh, the road's okay." And
Are you bombing? You better not be fucking doing new material when people think that you're me. God damn it!
Every
time he bombs, he's like, "I'm Drew Morgan."
Thank you,
I'm
Morgan.
Drew Morgan.
Yeah.
You motherfucker.
But I thought I had skated in New York, right? Like, because it would happen in New York all the time. Like, "Oh, Drew," and I'm like, "Oh," they're like, "Oh, sorry, dude. Who are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, some other guy." But I was in Huntsville. I've been in Nashville for a year. I'm doing a show in Huntsville, and this, I'm closing out a show, and this guy comes up to me, and he's like, "Oh man, I saw you like a couple weeks ago. You killed it, man. I love watching. You're a goat, dude. You're gonna be amazing." And I was like, "Thanks, man. That's awesome, dude." And then he immediately realized that he was talking about you.
Oh, dude, that's a story that feels good to hear. But again, I'm worried. If I find out you're doing your B material or your new shit as me, I'm going to be very upset. Material only as Drew.
When this podcast is out, at that point, you will have no more career. This is going to be my work for the next couple of weeks.
I love following you because I get to comment on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, or if you're hosting, I don't think I've gone before you in a lineup in Nashville yet where I haven't gotten to comment on it, but then I don't have to worry about it. The advantage there is there's nothing for me to comment on. I just get to be the guy or whatever. But yeah, I like to comment on it because you are, generally speaking, usually when I see you, in better shape than me. So I get to like talk about how like, hey, Will let himself go. You know what I mean? And welcome to the future, bitch.
My favorite one you said was, "Hey, go get famous already so I can be your stunt double."
Yeah,
that was one of my favorites. Where I was like, "You have no idea. I just want to be you." And so to hear that, I'm like,
you need to shoot higher, brother, because we're trying to get out of Burbank. God damn it!
All right, Drew, you want to bring us out?
Yes, thank you so much, Drew. We appreciate you. Go follow him and DJ's Cult whenever they are around.
Church of the Eat Fruit and Fuck.
Yeah, dude, you keep selling. It's already sold, my dude. It's done. It's a done deal. Hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next week.
Funny friends.